Righto, everybody. I'd like to thank Tony Hamilton Budgeting Advisory Trust for hosting us here today for an important announcement. Over the last 6 years in government, we've been really focused on making sure that the curriculum that our kids learn in school is setting them up for a really prosperous life beyond school. We know that too much has been left to chance previously in kids learning, and that's why we focused on making sure that we're getting a better handle on the basic skills around reading, writing and maths. It's also why we've put a significant emphasis on teaching New Zealand history in schools. And today I'm announcing the next step in that work, which is to make sure that financial skills become a core part of the New Zealand curriculum. We know that our young people, to set them up for success, we need to make they understand the basics of budgeting, they need to understand basic financial concepts, they need to understand how to be good with money, they need to understand things like interest rates, KiwiSaver, insurance, debt, borrowing. We want to make sure they're learning those core skills while they're because we know that that's going to set them up well for a prosperous life in school. Other countries around the world have been doing this. We've seen international studies. New Zealand's got a bit of catching up to do in that regard. Now is the right time to make the teaching of financial skills a core part of what kids are learning in school. They'll be able to do that in a range of different contexts. For example, teaching skills around money can also be a really good context for learning maths skills. So we're going to be creating a wide range of resources. Some have already been created. We started with the School Leavers Toolkit, which is a range of new resources that we've put in place as a government to help schools with that teaching. But there's more work to be done there. We're going to do that over the next year and a bit to make sure that by the beginning of 2025 it becomes a core part of what kids are learning in school.
Prime Minister, is this about budgeting or is this about people not having enough money to live on?
It's about making and how to be good with money. When they get a job, they need to understand about opening what interest rates can do. They need to understand debt. Our young people are getting themselves in without fully understanding what it is that they're getting themselves into. We're focused as a government on helping with practical measures that are going to cut some of those household costs. But we also need our young people to be looking as well.
How much of this is an issue?
I think all young New Zealanders need to be learning basic skills around money. We have an education system, a schooling system that is available to everybody, as it shouldn't matter what circumstances you're born into. You should still be able to learn the basic skills and concepts that are going to set you up well.
School Leavers Toolkit, that was policy in 2017. This is, I guess, a long time in the making. Why now? Why this moment?
The School Leavers Toolkit has added new resources that we can draw on in teaching financial literacy, but we still know that not every school is being. That's why we're going to make it a core part of the curriculum.
What will teachers have to do to upskill?
We will have a range of support available for teachers so they can teach the financial skills that we know our young people need, and we'll have a range of curriculum resources as working with those who are already producing some of those resources. For example, the banks are already doing some work in schools to provide those resources and to supplement the teaching that's available in schools. We want to continue to work with them to make sure we're maximising those opportunities.
How was your today?
It was really positive. It was other than the weather, which obviously is a bit inclement. It was a really warm welcome. There was some fantastic conversation, including afterwards as we had lunch, and I had the opportunity to go and visit.
What were some of those conversations that you had?
A wide range of conversations in the political environment, and I think there is some concern about sort of elevated race baiting at the moment, to use a fairly blunt term, and I share some of those.
There was, in some of the speeches, calls to politicians to stop using Māori as political football. I guess what will you do to ensure that doesn't happen in this election?
I think we can lead by example. The Labour Party doesn't use Māori as a wedge in order to generate votes from other New Zealanders, and I don't think any other political party should be doing that either.
Prime Minister, why announce this now when you've had 6 years to do so?
We've been focused on reform curriculum, which is what all young in schools, to make sure that we've got a focus on the core skills that they need. So we have been focused on the implementation of the New Zealand history curriculum has actually provided a good model for how we can ensure that really important learning isn't left to chance. Financial skills are really important learning, and so we want to make sure, like New Zealand history, that that's integrated into what schools are teaching.
And given the stats you've cited, how concerned are you've allowed a generation of Kiwis to leave school financially illiterate?
This is a long-standing challenge for New Zealand, and it's not just New Zealand actually. Studies around the world, financial literacy have actually been around the world. Other countries have been tackling this as well, and so we're seeing across the world more school systems putting more can't afford to be left, and that's one of the reasons now going to be making that a core part of our curriculum.
You mentioned the parallel New Zealand history, that was delayed. When will this be implemented in full?
Beginning of 2025.
And how much is it going to cost?
One of the things that we've done as a government is set up a curriculum centre within the Ministry of Education, which is resourced to do this work. So the resources are already there, so it won't come at an additional cost because we've already resourced the Ministry of Education to be able to do work on curriculum areas like this.
What's going to be dropped then if this is now a focus?
Well, we've only just set up the curriculum centre, so this will be one of the first priorities that we give them.
How will you be measuring results?
We require every year schools to report to parents twice a year about how their kids are going against and progressing against the curriculum, and they will have to report to parents twice a year about how kids are doing in their learning of financial literacy as part of that.
Just going back to the Koroneihana, what do you mean by race baiting?
I think that we have seen examples of where some politicians are trying to use programs that are designed to address disparities between Māori and non-Māori, particularly in areas like in education, and to drive a wedge between Māori and non-Māori New Zealanders. I don't think that's the sort of thing that responsible leaders should be doing.
Can you be specific in terms of who's doing that?
The people who are complaining about the of a Māori Health Authority, which is designed to ensure that we address the fact that Māori have poorer outcomes from our public health system than non-Māori New Zealanders. I think that's a significant advance in the right direction, and I think concerns that are being raised there about programs that are designed to address the health disparities for our Māori population, politicians trying to use that to suggest that Māori are getting preferential treatment are simply being irresponsible.
Does Labour have perhaps some responsibility there in the sense of perhaps some of these policies weren't properly explained when they were first conceived, and things like co-governance? I guess that conversation in the beginning was mostly driven by National and ACT, and there was a bit of a void of information there. Does Labour have kind of responsibility there to...
I think the people who are doing race baiting are responsible for their own actions.
I think that Labour needs to better explain some of these concepts.
The explanations have only been there. I think in the case of the water reform, we didn't explain why we were doing water reform and the way that we should have that now. We've actually given New Zealanders a much greater understanding of the financial cost of inaction. Would pay a much greater rates bills if we don't do something about the terrible state of our water infrastructure. But in terms of the race baiting component that has clearly been evident in some of the opposition to that, I think the people doing that need to take responsibility for what they're doing.
And there were some calls today to better elevate the kingitanga, I guess Te Pāti Māori around similar status to the British monarchy. Do you have any views on that, and what do you think of, I guess, the current status of kingitanga?
I met with the kingitanga a couple of weeks ago, and they gave me a list of things that they would like to talk to the government about. I undertook to go away and get some advice on those and to look at those. That's what I'm in the process of doing at the moment, so I'm not going to make any specific commitments to and that I've said that there were issues that were raised today.
Some other comments around government stepping up to previous commitments or promises by former Prime Ministers and that sort of thing. Do you think your government is doing enough to commit to those promises?
I think we have done a lot space in the 6 years that we've been in government. In fact, I think we've made more progress on many of those issues than many governments in recent times. That doesn't mean that the job is done. There is still a lot more work to do to live up to the commitments that the Crown has made over the last 180 odd years.
back to sort of Michael's question around that in terms of, I think a comment was made around stepping up to when the ugly head is roared, or its ugly head is reared, I should say. In that regard, when there is backlash to some of this movement or progress, what do you say to that?
What I've said all along, I think in my first speech at YT, the fear that can come from uncertainty. But I believe as political leaders we have a responsibility to light the path forward rather than to exploit that fear for political purposes.
Have you done enough to light the path?
I believe that that's exactly what we're doing as a government.
Prime Minister, what do you make of ACT's promise today of performance-based pay for government department chief executives?
We had a performance-based pay for government department chief executives in the past. It didn't make a heck of a lot of difference. If they want to spend time bringing that back, then of course they can do that. Fundamentally, we've got to be focused on making sure that our public services are resourced to do the job that they need to do. And the ACT Party are proposing to cut billions and billions of dollars from health, from education and from the other public services that New Zealand. They can introduce performance pay for the chief executives, but if they're cutting the funding for those services, the outcomes those chief executives I haven't really thought about it.
When did you learn? When did you learn about investing?
I think, like a lot of New Zealanders, I probably learned more about financial literacy as an adult than I did growing up and going through the school system. And I want to make sure that young New Zealanders get that opportunity to learn from a younger age so that they can make good decisions when they leave school.
Do you recommend people invest in airport shares?
I'm even going to answer that.
Prime Minister, why is there a need to make this compulsory rather than encourage schools to do the best they can?
Financial literacy, financial skills have such a significant impact on the lives that people lead beyond the school system. We want to make sure that that's not left to chance. We want people to understand the basic concepts around money. People need to understand when they go and they sign up for a loan what compounding interest means so that they don't find themselves in financial difficulty when that can be avoided.
What does compounding interest mean?
What means that the interest keeps going up. Right.
Can I just ask, Countdown today announced essentially redesigning their stores and putting a whole bunch of new measures in what they call rampant crime. Do you have any comments?
The government's been really actively focused on targeting young retail offenders. The police have issued, have these offenders, and we've been really proactive in putting in place. Many of the offenders are very young. Some as young as 10, 12 years old. We've got to make sure we're getting them back onto the straight and narrow so that they have a brighter future ahead of them.
So essentially, the businesses taking these steps on their own, you support that.
But businesses will always be focused on loss minimization. Retailers have always done that. Always do that. Is young people committing that's okay, and we do need to do more to combat that. And over the last few months, we've set out quite a lot of extra work in that space that the government's doing.
We might wrap there.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. Say thank you to the team here again. Thank you again.
I love it.